everybody. I see our audience
Hello.
members rolling in. So happy to have you here today. I'm super excited about this event.
Yes, we're so excited to host this Q&A and hear more about your questions and be able to give you some of those answers, make it clear.
Absolutely. All right. So, hello, I am Kara Lecklider. I am a BCBA and Director of Sales at Motivity, and I will be hosting today's town hall style event with the Behavior Chick. I have with me Gabriella Nelson. She is a BCBA, an ABA business owner, and this is so cool, a certified behavioral sleep specialist. She owns Lively Behavioral Solutions and is committed to making sessions lively for the clients she serves. I love that so much. And a lot of you probably know her as the Behavior Chick on Instagram. And she is known there for her very relatable content, often gives me a good giggle with some of those reels, and then really posting some very helpful content for our field. So we're really thrilled to host her today and give her the opportunity to share her authentic experience switching over to Motivity from a legacy system. We will also be joined today by Esther Cho, who is a mid-tier supervisor and RBT at Lively Behavioral Solutions. Esther is currently pursuing her master's degree and hopes to become a BCBA. So she will be joining us shortly to provide the frontline staff perspective of making the switch to Motivity from a legacy system. And she is really well equipped to do so because of her supervisor role and also her RBT perspective and just the way that she has her hands in those day-to-day operations. And that was perfect timing, Esther. And so she will be answering those specific questions because we really want you to get the idea of what it's like for frontline staff to switch systems in addition to that owner BCBA perspective. Hi, Esther. And what's really fun about today's event is this is completely unscripted. We do not have anything planned. We want this to be completely controlled by you. And I told Gabriella and Esther, I want them to be straightforward, honest, and really give you that true experience. Because when I talk to people about switching systems, one of the most helpful things that they can do is talk to somebody who's already done it and who has been through it. So, with that being said, please utilize that Q&A. I will be looking at that to create this webinar as we go. And there were a couple questions submitted ahead of time. And there was one in particular that I thought is really good to kick us off. And Gabriella, I'll direct this one at you. This one is specifically around when do you know it's time to make the switch? Obviously, it's effort just to look into different systems and start to complete those demos and that evaluation process. What was your breaking point and how did you decide it was time to evaluate software systems for a change?
Yeah. Yeah. And so being in the field for a while, I've been there from paper data to different legacy systems. I've been through a few of them. And so when I started this company, I had chosen one. And what really led me to my breaking point is a lot of staff were complaining to me about different parts of the system. I was finding myself becoming more of an IT role when I know nothing about IT. I'm like, did you log in and log out? Like, that's about as much as I can help. The tickets that I was submitting for help on weren't getting responses. And some of these things are urgent matters, right? We're dealing with a lot of data collection and a lot of goals on these software programs that I wanted to make sure are being tracked at the real life moment. And I don't know if anyone's ever been through this, but if a system glitches and you have to all of a sudden be paper data and it's a new client and you don't have paper data ready, it's really hard to be like telling the RBTs, go just do a few goals that you remember. That's not quality care. There were a lot of things like maybe glitching session notes that I was having to hear from the RBTs on needing more session note time to make sure that they get these done, and they're having to rewrite it, which can be hard too because they know that they want to put that all of that set all those session notes in the right place and in that moment. And so that kind of makes it hard. And so I started looking into different software programs to make those decisions and went through a lot of demos and lots of conversations to be able to make that decision.
That's really interesting because I think when people think about the software they're using, something that they don't necessarily realize that it affects is staff morale and really staff retention. So, Esther, I'm going to present a similar question to you. Uh, on that note, what were some of the complaints that you and other staff had about your current software, and how is that affecting things? And then how did that bubble up to Gabriella so that she was able to know it was time to look into an alternative?
So I know like from our previous software, there was a lot of like issues that we came across, like what Gabby said, lots of glitches. I personally dealt with that. It is frustrating. And so switching over to this one with Motivity, it was kind of scary a little bit in the beginning because it's something new. But once we started using it, it was actually really easy and I haven't come across any glitches at all so far. So yeah.
That's awesome. All right, so continuing down our list of questions here. Gabriella, how did you approach that evaluation process and how did you figure out which system, ultimately Motivity, was the right fit for you?
Yeah. So with evaluating kind of how the staff are feeling, I knew some staff maybe aren't totally comfortable with telling me right away. And so at the company as a whole sends out an anonymous feedback forms for supervisors, for the company, for administration staff, just so we can go ahead and receive that bi-directional feedback to see what improvements can be made. And so this kept coming up in a few months of those feedback forms. And so I would see people ask, like, do we ever think about switching? Like, what are we going to do with these glitches? And then it was just a lot of like, well, what do we do when we can't do our notes because it glitched or it's not working or it's not logging us in? Um, and those questions just became really piled on. And so in trying to find a new software program, I was honestly really nervous because all of our clients' data was there, all the programs are set up. As you know, that takes hours and hours of work and usually not all at once. So switching data collection softwares, I was like, I don't know. People kept kind of pushing me in that direction. I was listening to it, but I didn't necessarily want to make that change because I'm also kind of a person of creature of habit, right? I'm like, it's not the best, but let's keep pushing through. And it's doable, but is it best practice? And so I started just kind of looking around and I knew of a lot of different softwares and people had different things to say about it. I went through the Reddits, I went through the Facebook pages. I scheduled so many demos with so many different companies I haven't used as far as data collection software and practice management. And so it really just came down to who I thought kind of had the best product. And that was you guys at this point, because it just had so much that I was looking for and so much that I didn't have to fix about it. And I just really liked that open collaboration and that's one of the things I asked every single data collection software program that I demoed is I'm really understanding that no software is going to be perfect. I know a lot about coding. One of our best friends actually does coding for a lot of like websites and apps. And I know it will take months and months and months of him writing a code. And he almost like jokes like by the time you ever launch a code, it's expired. And so I'm sure that's the same case with Motivity as well, is that the software development team is going off what's maybe been requested months ago and are they going to be willing to make those changes? And so that's one thing Motivity was like, yeah, we would love to hear it, we would love to make changes. And for those of you that I don't know if there's a lot of business owners attending or just BCBAs or RBTs, but there's ever-changing insurance requirements. There's things that we need to track. There's different ways we need to track it. And that's something I really was looking for, is are they going to be willing to help us make those changes as they're needed, or is this software going to quote unquote expire? And so that's really what led me here.
And what's been your experience so far with that?
Yeah, it's been great. And so as I mentioned, not every software is perfect. And as Kara said, I want to be completely honest. Has there been different little changes I want to make? Yes, but not detrimental to the product as a whole. I think that overall, their ABA graphs are there, the different ways to track, the different ways to make the sessions, and all of that has been so helpful. There was a time where I wanted the appointments to show the addresses, and they got it up and running within a few months. And so that's something that I really appreciate about the software team, is that not only did our representative, each company that starts with Motivity gets kind of a representative that helps them. Not only did she take that seriously, but the software took that seriously. And I thought what was really unique about the program is they also have tickets that you can submit. And so not only did I bring out my representative, but before that, it was 11 p.m. at night, and I wanted to make sure that I didn't forget, and I submitted a ticket before I even was able to talk to that representative. And when I submitted that ticket, within that morning, I got a response from the software team of, thank you so much for your request. Like, I think that's a great idea. Like, we'll keep you updated, but I think we're going to work out at this time. Not even knowing like who I am, who this is. It's just a customer making a request through a ticket. And so I thought that was really telling for the team as a whole, that they really listen to you. And I love, like, as you can see, Kara's director of sales, and she's a BCBA. Their whole team has BCBAs. So even the person that I'm assigned to is a BCBA. And so all these people know what I'm talking about. So when I make these requests, it's really helpful. Because I know when I kind of switched from that legacy software, one, I never heard from those tickets, but also when I would finally be able to get a hold of someone, they didn't understand the importance of it. And they would try to give me a different alternative, like, well, you can just try to track it this way, or you can just try to do it this way. And I'm like, but it doesn't look great. And that's not how we want to track it. And ultimately that affects our quality of care and how we're presenting our data, not only to parents, but to our insurance companies.
That's great information. Thank you. All right. Can you tell us a little bit about that process of transitioning from the legacy software to Motivity? How did you actually go about that process of taking your programs and your client information and then getting it onto Motivity? And what did that look like?
Yeah. And so think about this for a second. So when we switched over, obviously it took months and months before I was ready to actually make the switch. The poor sales team, like, even I kept telling them, like, I don't know, like, are you sure it's gonna be okay? Like, should I wait until like some of these authorizations are more close to expiring? Like, what does that look like? They assured me I can do it at any time. And so I was just kind of honestly taking it day by day. And so when I did that switch over, I was able to, they have what's called a practice library, and you're able to create templates kind of programs that may be similar to other programs that you can assign later. And so what that really did for our company is there are some goals that are very similar across clients, right? Like I might have 6 clients that are yes and no questions. And so what I really loved is they had kind of shortcuts set up, like, for example, if you put, and Kara, correct me if I'm wrong, but if you put like $learner in the practice library, then when you assign it to a client, it's going to pick up on all that information from that client. And it will say, like, let's say Kara will respond to yes questions in 80% of opportunities. And it's going to take each of their names to tailor it so that when I'm going in to edit those specific programs to make it more individualized, the name's already there. It's all set up. My criteria is there. Maybe it's 80% across 5 sessions, whatever that template was. And so making that first and assigning it was really helpful. Kara, correct me if I'm wrong too, but there was also, I believe, 8 hours that was assigned to the BCBAs that I worked with. And so each company is assigned a customer service kind of representative, and they're also BCBA, so they know how to write programs, that they were able to take my data and switch it over for me. So they were looking at those programs and switching it into Motivity. And I believe I had like 8 hours of help on that. So I was able to really consult with them and learn how they did that, how they set up a task analysis, how they set up partial interval recording, all of those things to make it more seamless. And it was just nice to have that extra help. And of course, my amazing supervision team, we had our mid-tiers and our BCBAs kind of switching that over. And because we didn't switch, it wasn't just cut off our old system and then go over here. We kind of had both running for a little bit, that we were able to switch it over slowly. And so it wasn't just like this big daunting task of like, on Monday, we're cutting that off and have to start there. And like, I think that's kind of what I was worried about at first is it going to be like a straight cutoff and then I have to get everything all in by a certain time? So, I mean, I believe that I took probably about a week or two. It took me to switch over all of my clients. But then to make it more thorough, that was more ongoing, like during sessions to make it there. And because our other system really wasn't set up for that, it just improved our quality of care as well, of being able to track it as partial interval recording instead of maybe only frequency and things like that. And so that really helped.
And Esther, I'm so curious to hear your input from the frontline staff perspective on that initial change of getting everything over from the legacy system to Motivity.
So switching from the old one to the new, it was, like how Gabby said, creature of habit. I'm the same. I think we all are. Um, I think the change was a little bit scary, but once we opened up Motivity, there was a lot of options. So it was like, whoa, this is new. But the moment you kind of like start it, you're like, oh, this is easy. And then you go through the goals, it's like, oh, whoa, there's like folders or categories. Like when you click on it, it opens up and it's more detailed. And so I think that's really helpful for RBTs, compared to the old one where there wasn't so much description or options, but like this one, it has way more options. And like in the beginning, it might be a little bit scary because it is a lot in the beginning, like, whoa, this is a lot of new things. But the moment you use it more, it's like, this is so nice. Yeah.
That's great. All right, next question. Do you like the report writing and program building process with Motivity? So Gabriella, I'll start with you, and we could start specifically with program building and libraries since we already discussed that a little bit.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, starting with program building, I do love it. Did I think it was more work? Yes, but because it's better quality. And so what I mean that by that, I'm kind of backing off Esther, where she was saying, like, is it a lot more? Yes. You're right. Our old system didn't have a lot of those descriptions. This new system, it kind of has 3 different phases. And so within each goal, let's go with that respond to yes again, just for the sake of easiness. We have a baseline phase, a train phase, and a maintain phase set up through Motivity. And so you can set up different criterias. And so you can have 100 or 80% of opportunities across 10 session is the train phase. And then it will automatically transition to that maintain phase based on that criteria. And then you can have a new maintenance phase of maybe it's 80% across 5 sessions, or maybe if one session fails, it goes back into train phase to make sure it's being maintained. And so because it's so thorough, I did love that, but was it, I guess, overwhelming at first? Yes, but I had that support of the team helping me and literally having a Zoom call like this and sharing their screen and walking me through it. So like Esther said, once you kind of get a hang of that, then it's really easy. And it honestly saved us a lot of time in our sessions to be more hands-on too, because now it's automatically transitioning from those different phases like baseline or train and then that maintain phase. And so when I set it up like that, then our BCBAs and our supervisors can also now look at it and validate, do I agree with that analysis? Do I want to switch it back to train phase? So it still gives you those options as well. It's not just all automated, but I did like that option of it being automated. And what's cool about the different programs that you can build too is you kind of, how Esther was saying, has folders. It's like a long-term goal, and then you could do short-term goals within it. And so let's say we have one program we built out that's answering WH questions, and it kind of moves through different sets. And so it can be like what questions regarding to household items, or what questions that like, what are you doing, or what is she doing, or what is he doing, things like that. We have one program that follows, I believe Motivity kind of built this one out, but it has VB map all integrated into a whole program library. And so we have one that's like ecoics. And so the ecoics group 1, 2, and 3 are there and they're transitioning. And so what that allowed our staff to do too is they didn't have to wait for our supervisor to come and analyze that. Because as you know, sometimes you're in session, and even though we see them every week, sometimes we're so busy hands-on helping, depending on the impact this kid is having, that we don't get to look through every single goal every single session. And so some of those goals may have gone before, like 2 or 3 weeks, as asking that same maybe echoic question, or the same 3 echoic questions, where now it's transitioning. So now they can just move on to the next one, and then I can analyze it the next time I'm there. So I appreciated that about the program builder, is that it has those options of moving forward and making sure we're maintaining it, making sure we're generalizing it. But that does take some setup work. But once it's set up, again, you have that practice library. And so you can build that out. So once you assign that to the clients, it's not like you're building it out every single time.
And have you noticed any differences through those automatic transitions and phase changes, an increase in learner progress just because of the...
Yeah, I would say absolutely, because then they're exposed to more of those targets, and they're not waiting on the supervisor being there to make that next transition to the next phase. And so, yeah, we've noticed a lot of significant progress in our graphs, and that trend line increasing, so that we can kind of move on to those next skills. And so we're not spending a lot of time on it.
Great. And then to get into building out templates. So what has it been like to build out report templates, note templates? Do you like that process so far?
Yeah. So sorry, I'll go into that in a second, but I have a lot of different insurance companies that we work with. And so Motivity does have different reports that are already set up based on different insurances. We also work with what's known in California as Medi-Cal. And so it's a specific template that they're actually building me right now, because it is so different than the templates that are there. And so I appreciate that about the team. I actually am meeting with our representative this afternoon because they built it out specifically for that insurance company. And so I really appreciate that too, like just because they didn't have the template in the other insurance agencies that they worked with, now they're building that out. And I'm able to kind of make my input on that of like, what do we want there? And that's what the meeting's about, is like, okay, what's best for you guys of how we're inputting this data, or what's pulling from Motivity, and how is this going to be working? Because I might, as a company, have a certain like template that I want for maybe replacement behavior should be across 15 sessions, and skill acquisition goals maybe around 5 to 10 sessions, or whatever your company's preference is. It can help pull that. And so that's going to save a lot of time on inputting every single graph, inputting every single average, so we can really focus on those paragraphs and really inputting what we know about the client and what we have observed. And then as far as the note templates, I did build those out myself just because I had specific, again, insurance requirements that I had. I believe there was a video that helped guide me through everything that there was. And so I keep mentioning the customer service representatives, which have been awesome, but also there is a lot of tutorial videos of how to build the program. And so I could pause it and then I can like look at where they're at and kind of follow along in that way as well. But that's also how I did our notes, is I was able to kind of look at those videos and build that out. What's really great about those notes too is I'm able to put different requirements on it. And so, like, for example, our RBTs have to have their notes clinically approved by a BCBA. And then our BCBAs and so our supervision and consult sessions, all of their notes are approved by me. So it kind of goes through these levels of administrative approval, and then it's also approved on a clinical level. And so every single session we know has a note and has been thoroughly done, so that in case we were to ever go through like an audit or something, this was set up in my session notes that we have the note, we have everything there. We're not worried about, oh, hopefully every session note is done. I think that was a great feature that Motivity offered.
And Esther, I know that one of the biggest concerns which caused Gabriella to even look at other systems was the glitching of the session notes. How has the experience on Motivity been from an RBT perspective in terms of running your session, filling out your note, submitting it for approval, and so on?
My experience has been great with Motivity. So what I liked about it the most was how organized it was. And it wasn't, I know like switching over to a new software, it is a little bit scary, but like the moment we started, it's really easy. The moment you click on things, you get the hang of it, like, oh, this is the goal. And you can even see it live. And that's what I love the most. So when you're taking data, there's like these little squares that shows up on the side as well. And so like you see the progress of even like yourself taking data. So that's what I really enjoyed, because it keeps me honest too, where it's like, I gotta make sure I, provide learning opportunities. On top of that, like in session, I think when you're really in the moment with the client, you forget about the notes. But when you click on the note, it's right there. You can open it up, write something like really small, and then just push it to the side. And that's one of my favorite options of Motivity. There's like so much I could talk about with Motivity, so I'm like, which one should I talk like
Go for
explain?
it. We love to
I
hear it.
know. I also like, so when you pull up the note, sometimes you think like, oh no, I logged out. You just click back in and like your notes are right there. I don't know how it works, but it saves whatever you write. Like, so even if you make a mistake and then you log out, or you think you logged out, you go back in, everything is saved. Like it's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, our CTO, when he was developing Motivity, was very adamant about how he wanted everything real time and everything saved at the moment. And there was a lot of work that went into it. But I agree, it's one of those magical things where you're like, whoa, it's still there. Even like if you start a duration timer and you somehow turn your device off and you come back, it's still going right where it should be, intervals and so on. All right, Gabriella, how do you feel that Motivity has prepared you in the event that you get audited? Do you feel confident? Any concerns there?
Yeah. And so um because it has all of those different features that I can set up with those insurance requirements, I believe that that has set me up to be able to be prepared for that audit. And so, for example, a lot of audits will look for certain sections being filled out, right? And so, like, let's say for a session note, it's requiring me to have a response to session, maybe the participants there, maybe the location, the timestamps, all of that. And so I can tailor that for all of my program development and my notes to be able to have those features that are required. And so Let's say on the note, there might be some sections that I don't necessarily need that day, maybe modifications made by a supervisor. Maybe the supervisor wasn't there that day, so the RBT doesn't have to fill it out. I can set up my note in the way that it requires those responses or not. And so the note literally cannot be completed. It won't even be submitted to me for approval unless it has those required components. And so where it ends up going is every account, whether it's an RBT or BCBA or whoever's there, has that pending notes section. And so that's going to show up to me as unsigned notes, meaning the therapist has not completed this, it's unsigned, which I also love because I didn't want to just be approving ones that are submitted. I can see everything. I can see the unsigned ones, I can see the ones that are submitted for approval. And so that we can kind of really keep those honest and they have those timestamps. What I really love about it too is they can revise their time. And so it's going to show up to me as orange. It'll be like, okay, this time was revised. And then it can be associated with our integrated system, whether or not that was what matched the schedule. So that keeps them honest as well. And when that happened, I can see when this session was started. And then I require them to put why if it wasn't. Like, we need to adjust that time to be, if it was 15 minutes late, we're 15 minutes late. We can't start that timer for those 15 minutes. And I can see that all on the notes. So because we set up our company that we literally don't submit payroll until every session note is completed. That, I believe, has prepared us for the audit, so that in that case, we know that time was there. We know the session's completed. We know all the required components are there. And I don't have to worry about scrambling to make sure, do we have all those notes? Make sure that's there and things like that, which is really great because as great as all of our staff is, I know that mistakes could happen where maybe on our old system, the note would glitch and it didn't save. And then we didn't have a note for that day. And we're like, where is it? And they're like, well, I did it. And then I'm like, well, we got to redo it because where is that note? It has every single note there, which I feel like has prepared us. Hopefully that answers the question. But if you want to get more specific, I'm happy to go into it.
Yeah, and now that you also brought up the integration with practice management, so I know that you are using Motivity alongside one of our integrated partners. You've embraced this best-in-class model where you've selected Motivity for data collection and then a practice management vendor on that end, and then the two systems speak with one another. So what's been your experience with the integration and with utilizing two separate systems?
Yeah. Okay. For everyone listening, that was my biggest, like, I don't know if I want to do it because there was two different systems. And oh my goodness, am I thankful that I did. I think because it's separated also, both systems, both for data collection and like that billing scheduling side, can really focus on their specialty. And so I think that's what makes them both so great. I was really worried though about, how is that going to go? Do I have to be on two different websites? Now I have to check over here to make sure it's over here. And is that going to alert me? And would I know? And all those questions are going through my head, right? I'm like, I don't know. I'd rather maybe have one website that has it all, even if it maybe doesn't have as many features as I'd like, because it's all in one place. It feels like one place. Because it integrates so well and so live, I can literally type on my schedule, or maybe say Esther's schedule. She has our one-to-one session that day. I type it. As soon as I press save, you see it pop up on Motivity. It's so seamless and live that has really made it possible to feel comfortable in using both. I really don't feel like, yes, it's two logins, but it's really so seamless that it doesn't feel like that. It feels like I'm using one system. My mind had to wrap my head around that for a little bit though, because I was like, what do you mean two? Like, I don't know. But trusting what I say, each of them are so experienced in what they know and what their specialty is that it honestly made for a lot better of a transition than I'd ever hoped for it to be. And in that too, when I'm looking at both, if there were to be like maybe the session didn't link for some reason, it's showing me that. It shows me that there's an orange thing, and then I just press the button and I'm like, oh, link to appointment, and it's there. And so that's also communicating with our practice management software. When I'm looking at that schedule, I literally have it set up that it has a little green, I think like check mark, I want to say it is, on each of those appointments. And so I can see if there's a completed and approved note on there. And so, like, if Esther were to submit her time card, she can't do that until every session note is there. And so that keeps our administrative side really honest in submitting those claims, and those payroll is, this happened. We had this session, here's this note, here's this completion, and we can see that. And so I think the integration has been pretty seamless. It feels like one website, but it was a big worry of mine, and it shouldn't have been.
And Esther, how about your experience from the day-to-day perspective of an RBT? What is it like utilizing two separate systems?
At first I was like kind of confused, honestly. But we just had to learn like Motivity is the data collection side, and then Aloha is just like the scheduling. Um, I'm in that like weird position where I am an RBT, but also I do supervision as well. So like I do go back and forth. I do like it because it does separate. So like when I'm in my scheduling mode, it's all right there, Motivity, and it just links. And how Gabby said, it like links directly. It's very seamless, and so I really like that about that. And I like that you can adjust your time on Motivity. So like let's say a client is late, and so you can just adjust the time on Motivity and not on Aloha. So that's a nice little touch on Motivity.
Yeah. And for somebody who's just an RBT and not doing the supervisory or scheduling, are they living wholly in Motivity?
Oh, all my RBTs love Motivity right now.
Yeah.
The way it's designed, it's very easy to use. And even the note taking, every section on the note, like when Gabby was talking about how they can see if the note is completed, even when we're filling it out and click submit or sign, it'll actually tell you if you completed it. So if you missed one section, it's not going to let you sign. And so there's times where I'm like, okay, I'm done. I'm about to sign. And then it won't let me sign. It kicks me back to the area where I missed it. I'm like, oh, I forgot to put this real quick. And then you sign. It's really easy. And so I like that.
That's great. All right, let's jump into some clinical outcomes. So, Gabriella, as a business owner and a BCBA, something that you're constantly looking at, I'm sure, is clinical performance and clinical KPIs and all that kind of stuff. What are some changes you've seen since you switched to Motivity in terms of how you collect data, how you analyze data, learner progress, and all that good stuff?
Yeah. And yeah, I think I kind of went into that a little bit earlier about like the baseline phase, that train phase, that maintain phase has really helped us kind of target more and really thoroughly. And I love that it had that maintain. I can make a generalization phase if I wanted to across people. So each of our goals are really hitting all of those criteria in one place, which I love, but also because of there is so many different ways to target these goals, I'm able to really tailor it to exactly how I want to, and exactly how, like when we're taking that BCBA exam, right? We were taught all these different data collection ways, really. And what I love about this is it has all those. And I think the system that I switched from before, it didn't have all those options. It had some of the options, but it didn't have all of them. And so I'm able to, do I want to do a countdown timer? Do I want to do duration? Do I want to do partial interval? Do I want to do whole interval? Do I want to do latency? Do I want to do in the response time? I can set that up to be happening how exactly that. I want it. I can set it up to be hourly for that rate if I want. I can set it up to be daily. I can see that in the graphs. For the graphs, I can easily put in any event that's happening. This client went on a 2-week vacation. This client started a medication. Oh, they got off the medication. Oh, now they're gone for a month due to maybe a stop in their insurance or something. Like there's things that happen that can affect our data as well. And so all those setting events I'm able to put there. They started school this date. They now are on summer break. We know that those behaviors sometimes pop up during those breaks. And so why are we seeing that? Oh, because usually we service them at night and now we're there in the morning and now we can see where that break is. And so when we come across those, we can clearly label those graphs in how we want to make sure we're maintaining that clinical quality and that we're performing and reporting everything that we say that we are in all those insurance reports. And so even if parents tell us maybe a setting event like grandma was there, we can put that in, and so that we can kind of see how does that affect our data, and maybe there were some behaviors that were reinforced that now you're going to see a little bit more that week. And ultimately I think that the switch, not only from that supervision side, has been so helpful, but also for our RBTs is a lot more clear on, we can put a description, we can put a protocol, so we can put ideas, like we can put description right there with our SD and our response plus / response minus. And so that's just all showing up right there, like what would count as a plus, what would count as a minus. And then they can press details and it can go through a whole protocol of ideas if we want, different ways to do that, different activities that this client may already have in their house that we can use, different activities that we provide them that they can use to target this goal, and so that they're not feeling stuck. Because I think even the most experienced RBT can benefit from more ideas. As I don't know about you guys, but as a BCBA, sometimes I'll watch our RBTs target something. I'm like, that's a great way to target that. What a good idea. And so them seeing different ways too, no matter what their experience level is, I think could be helpful in creating more of those opportunities and keeping those sessions really lively and fun.
And Esther, this is a great question for you, especially as that mid-tier supervisor. Have you seen any change in procedural fidelity because of the switch over to Motivity, or any way in general the data has been collected?
I feel like with Motivity, taking data and like seeing it live, and so taking eye away is like really cool. Like the moment the RBT takes data and if I can see it, we can take eye away right there. So it's nice because you can see it by color. It's not just like plus or minus or anything like that. Sorry, I have the chat open. I think there's questions.
Yeah, no worries. You can finish up your thought. I think that's a really cool feature to talk about is
I'm
just,
sorry.
no, go for it.
Yeah, so for like the IOA, I thought it was really cool because it's like color coded and you could see like it's right or wrong instead of just minus and plus. So that was nice with Motivity.
That's awesome. And yeah, the question that just came in is there a way to communicate client progress to parents through Motivity using photos, videos, reports, and so on? And have you utilized any of those features?
I believe that there is, but I have not utilized those features yet. So I wouldn't be able to tell you about my experience with them because I just haven't used it. I do see that option there, I believe on like the top right or something, there's an option for that video. So like, you'd obviously want to get like parent approval for that. But I think that could be a great option, especially for those companies that want to kind of look through that, or maybe they're taking baseline data and they want to observe that. They can take that video and see what they want to do to track that data. Kara, I don't know if you know more about those features that you can speak on, but I personally have not used it, but I have seen it there.
Yes, you're absolutely right. There is a plus video button. That's what you're referring to in that corner there. And so you can record video. And then you also do have the opportunity to give parents their own logins to Motivity and curate based on their role and permissions what you want them to see. So if you want them to be able to review graphs, to sign notes, to see or record videos, have you been utilizing any of those features at this point?
We haven't used that yet, but we do want to incorporate that in the future so that they can sign off on the notes and they can see kind of what happened. They can look at their data when they want to. At this time, we're just showing them the data during our parent consult of like, this is what we're working on, this is what we're doing. But we do love that feature that we want to set it up in a way that parents can take that data themselves. Because sometimes you're like, let's just work on these 2 goals, right? And they could forget that. And so even though we communicate that through our messaging systems, that can be streamlined to, hey, here's your login, here's this in one place, and they can kind of keep track of their own data as well so that we get a clear picture of what's happening both inside and outside of session. So I do love that it offers that feature.
Yeah, what's really fun is you can actually create something called a caregiver playlist, and it's a very
Yeah.
streamlined, curated list of their data collection targets. So if you want to do any kind of generalization or any maintain targets that you want to practice with parents or, record behavior occurrence at home, parents can absolutely log in and do that. We'll have
Yeah.
to
And
get you set up on that. It's fun.
yes. Yeah. And we have created those playlists so far. We do have the different sections. And so when you go to press like collect data, we have one that says session, we have one that's community, and one that's parent. And even though we haven't given them the login to take their own yet, I do love that feature because for a lot of our staff, sometimes you could get overwhelmed with how many different goals we're working on. And maybe now you're going into community setting or setting with a peer and you just want to focus on what are those peer goals. You can make those different programs tailored to what exactly we need targeted in that setting. And so a lot of those learning opportunities will come from there and they're not distracted by all this other data happening. I like that it's separating our parent data as well in times that we want to. But I also love that if both are running, I can see both my parent data and my RBT data. And so maybe I'm supervising a one-to-one session, but the parent like comes in and they start doing something, I'd be like, ooh, I saw that. That was good priming. And I can kind of mark them for utilizing those strategies as well. And so it has the option of opening both or separating that. And those live features as well. When we say it's live, it's also not only live for the device you're using, but it's live if you were to have both your phone and your iPad open. And so that's been really great for community outings because we do use these very clunky big iPads. And so they have those big hard cases on them because we know that there are times maybe get thrown and we want to protect them, but that could be really obvious, right? And so we also want to have that client dignity that, okay, we're in the home, we're working on these things, here's that iPad, but now we're going into the community setting with their peers and we don't want to necessarily make that stand out. Most people are always on their phones, and then we switch over to our phone and we could see all that data that was there in that real life time. And so that's been really helpful too. And like Esther said, in taking that eye away has been clear because on our old system, we'd have to be like, okay, what are you targeting right now? Okay, well, did you take that data point? How many did you take so far? Okay, so after the third one, I'm going to start counting 4, 5, 6 to see if I match up with that. Okay, what did you get for number 4, 5, 6? Like, we don't have to do that anymore. Now I can just see it and I'm like, red. Why do you put red? Okay. Oh, you're right. It was because the SD was delivered and they needed prompting. Or why do you put a green? You're right. That is exactly what we were looking for. And so we can really increase that treatment fidelity. So, yeah, I love that.
That's great. All right, this is a cool question. I'm going to present this to both of you. Esther, I'll start with you. So, like the rose and the thorn, where like the thorn is the sticky and the rose is the beautiful. What has been your thorn of making this switch? So like the hardest part of making the switch to Motivity, and then what's been the rose? What's been the beautiful part?
Well, there's so many, but the thorn would be, I think, switching from the old software where it was very limited. I got very used to that. So switching to Motivity, it was a lot more like duration, partial interval, like all of these. It was a little daunting. And to be honest, I had a hard time taking data in the beginning where I'm like not used to taking duration. But like when we switched to um, the stop time timer, it did help. And so those were nice switches. There's so many options, and having those options, realizing like this is actually like more helpful than just not taking any of those duration or partial interval data. Um, the good things is everything that I just said, and more. And so what's cool about Motivity is there's so much options where I'm still learning, like, oh, this is like a new way to do things. Um, I've seen some RBTs, they customize their data collection to their own liking. So I've seen one where they pin all the target behaviors at the bottom. Another RBT will like switch the bottoms to the goals that they really want to focus on. So it's really how you want to tailor it during your session, which is like the coolest thing ever. Um, it's not like where you're scrolling and scrolling, trying to find the data or the goals that you're trying to run. It's all right there. You just have to click it. You can minimize it. I just love all the features and how it's customizable to your liking.
Great. All right, and Gabriella, what's your thorn and rose?
All right. Let me think about this for a second. I would say that my thorn. Okay, I'll say this is my thorn, but it's not really my thorn anymore. But when I did first switch, my thorn was exactly how we're saying, is how thorough it was a lot for my mind to comprehend on like, okay, we have this baseline phase, this train phase, and maintain phase. There's so many different buttons on like what you can do to make that really tailored and really thorough that it did take some getting used to. And it wasn't one of those things that like before we could kind of just put it into our system. And so we used a lot of manual timers where it was, okay, like they engage in cooperative play for 5 minutes or something. And we kind of just did plus or minus whether they did it or not, because our system didn't have a way to kind of thoroughly take those intervals. It was more so, did it happen or did it not, using manual timers. And so because this is so thorough, it was a lot of a learning curve on like, okay, putting that long-term goal, those short-term goals, those intermediate goals, making sure that it has all those criteria. And so at first I would be looking at the data and I'm like, oh man, like why isn't this transitioning yet? It's like 100% of opportunities for 8 or 9 sessions, but it didn't have as many opportunities per session to be transitioning. So then that was a error on my part, like a learner error on like, okay, it's the way I set it up to see that. And so that just took some getting used to, is kind of once I set up those templates, then tailoring it to each individual. And so when I look at that data, I'm like, oh, that's exactly what I wanted to see. So I think just the thoroughness of it at first was like, oh man, but now that I'm used to it, I can put it in like a minute. I'm like, okay, this is what I want, this is what I do, and then here it is. But at first I was like, okay, and then trying to explain it to other people. Sometimes you learn best by explaining it to other people, so we kind of learned together on that. And honestly, even talking to a lot of different people, even at Motivity, because they're constantly keeping up with the software, there's new features and it's coming up and there's things I don't know. And so every day I'm learning something new, which is actually really fun because I'm like, ooh, we can also do that. Can I also do that? And so some of the suggestions I was making, they had, I just didn't know where it was at the time. So I did love that. But what I would say that I really love most about Motivity is that it is so thorough. So it's kind of like my bittersweet. It what kind of was my thorn that turned into my love, because it did increase our clinical quality. I am able to take the session notes. I don't hear from people constantly all day, my note went out, I need more time, I need more session note time, I need to do this, or I didn't get to finish my note and I need to go to my next client, and so I'm going to finish it tonight, and oops, I forgot to finish it, and so I'm going to finish it in the morning. I don't have all these messages anymore. Now it's just all there. I see it. I know exactly what's happening. It's being done in real time. And so I think that also, as we know, data collection is so important in the moment, right? But also those session notes are so important in the moment. So like Esther said, being able to open it and be like, okay, this was the antecedent or this was the consequence, and any kind of information we need to know about that is right there. And then we can kind of close it out, continue to take our data collection, then come over here. And just, I think the quality of our reporting has really improved.
Great. All right. So the things that we hear most often about complaints with legacy systems, and I'm just going to put them out there because it's coming up in some of these questions too. Issues with glitching, data loss, system downtime, customer support. How have those things been with Motivity in comparison to what you experienced before?
Yeah. So I'll take kind of each one separately if I can remember them all. But that ticket support, I get a response right away, which has been drastically different than my experience that I never would hear from people before. And that the idea can or cannot happen is great. I've never been told it can't happen, which is great. It just sometimes is okay, like this seems like more of a priority, so I'm going to start doing this one, and then maybe on our next launch we'll consider that next feature. So I really love that collaboration between the practitioners and the software program. And then repeat that one more time. Sorry. What were the other questions?
Downtime.
Oh yeah, downtime. We haven't really experienced downtime. I believe there was one day where we had 5 minutes of downtime. And so by the time someone told me about it, they're like, I think my thing is down. And then another person put in the chat, like, oh, my Motivity is down too. I called the customer service representative. They're like, oh, it will be back up within a couple minutes. And I'm like, oh, okay. And it wasn't like a big 2 hours. We lost an hour of data or anything like that. It literally took like, I want to say like 4 or 5 minutes for it to be back up and running. And so when I told them, okay, just wait a few minutes, I was honestly scarred by some of the software programs I've used. I'm like, hopefully it actually is. And then it was back up. And I think that's one of Motivity's really catchphrases, I want to say, is they have very limited downtime. I forget your percentage, but the
We're
downtime,
at
I believe,
99.97%
yeah,
uptime.
99.97%. So that
That's
0.03 was
including,
those 4 minutes
right? Yeah,
that it
that's
was down.
including all of our maintenance too. We don't have maintenance windows, things like that.
Yeah, I've never experienced any of that too. And so sometimes, especially now that I have a newborn baby at home, there are times where I'm on it more in the middle of the night because I'm feeding anyways, or I'm looking at it then. It's not so much of, okay, I need to stay off of it for 5 hours tonight. And so, yeah, that downtime has really been almost non-existent besides those 4 minutes. And then it didn't really affect anything.
And then glitches. That was the last
Glitches.
one.
I haven't experienced any glitches. Maybe Esther, I know is taking more of the data collection more. No?
No
Yeah. And
glitches.
I feel like we're very open to feedback in our company, and I've never heard it from another RBT either of, oh, can't see it. So I don't think we have any glitches.
Yay.
Yeah.
All right. I know we're running out of time here, so I'm going to wrap it up with one final question. The switch, obviously, a lot of time, a lot of energy putting into it. Was it worth it? And would you recommend it to somebody else?
Yes, it is worth it. I would say that I don't want to say it's an easy switch. I'm not going to lie to you and be like, it's so easy. You could do it in a day. Does it take some work to do? Yes, but is it worth it? Also, yes. And I know a lot of these legacy softwares too will put into their contracts like, okay, there's going to be a 7% increase with no end each day. Motivity, what I love about their pricing too is they're very upfront. You can look it up on their website and see their pricing and be like, that's what it is. You don't have to wait for some salesperson to call you and tell you what it is, and it's changing every year. I haven't experienced that. And I literally, when people ask me about it on my Instagram, can just be like, here's the pricing, here's the link if you want to look into it, and like you can schedule a demo. And so I love that transparency. And so in switching the data too, did it take some time on our end? Yeah, but it was really, you have your support as your team too. It shouldn't all be on like that owner or just all on one BCBA. And so the Motivity would help you with that switch over and make it really seamless as possible. But also you have your staff to really help you make their programs thorough, and it's going to increase your clinical quality. So I would say it's worth it.
And Esther, what about you? What's your opinion?
Opinion on Motivity?
Is it worth it? Would you
Oh, of
recommend it
course
to a
it's worth
friend?
it. I don't have to complain about glitches or anything. I like that you could switch from like iPad to phone. It's just so easy to use, and so I highly recommend it.
Hey, that's awesome. Well, thank you so much to both of you for joining us and to everyone who joined and contributed questions. I am going to put into the chat the Motivity website if you would like to set up a demo for yourself. And we are happy to chat more.
Yeah, and the demos are free. I would really recommend like just looking into it and talking to them because they can show you more of the screen share and what it actually looks like too.
And our whole team are clinicians, and we get really excited to show you what we have. And we've all been in your shoes, so it makes it really fun.
Awesome. Thank
Thank
you.
you so much. Have a wonderful
You
day,
too.
and I hope to touch base soon.
Thank you. Have a great day, everybody.
Bye.